Good evening and welcome to the Cambridge Rare Disease Evening series of lectures and questions and answer session. I'm Patrick Chinnery. I'm a neurologist and I've been working with families with rare inherited diseases of the nervous system for nearly 20 years. And just looking back over my career, which seems short, it's fantastic to see how rare diseases have emerged from being an esoteric issue that most people can ignore to something that we all recognise is important and requires our attention. And Rare Disease Day, this is the 12th annual Rare Disease Day. It's an international event, and this event is part of that. And I'm proud to be here to chair this evening's talks and discussion. So welcome. We've got 4 very different presentations which are going to follow one after the other after my short introduction, followed by a question and answer session, and some of the questions have been submitted already. So we'll take all the questions at the end and just focus on going through the talks beforehand. But just to frame things, I'd like to give you a very brief introduction about rare diseases and about the involvement of Cambridge scientists in rare diseases. I suspect you all know what a rare disease is. It's a condition that's defined arbitrarily in Europe as a condition affecting less than 1 in 2,000 people. But there are many rare diseases, estimated between 6,000 and 7,000. And as a consequence, we know that these conditions affect about 1 in 17 people, either directly or through a family member. And the purpose of Rare Disease Day and events like this is to increase awareness about the importance of rare diseases so that we can encourage researchers to understand more about the causes, to develop treatments, and to help us influence policymakers across the world to provide health and social care to support patients and families who are affected by these conditions. It's being held by hundreds of patient organisations across the country, across Europe, and across the world. And it's been going since 2008, and you're part of it. Now, as part of this evening's proceedings, we're going to have a series of questions, and that's why you've been given these little keypads. And so this is a dress rehearsal for how this is going to work. So this is a dummy question which I'd like you to answer, and it's partly so that I learn how to use the system. So the question is, have you attended a rare disease event before? And the answer is yes, no, or not sure. If you could answer that with your keypad, I'll let you know what the outcome is. Crikey, this is going very fast. The polling is open. Still going? Looks like you're almost done. So there are 136 responses that have been collected in the last 30 seconds, and this is the answer. So 40% of you or thereabouts have attended a rare disease before. 60% haven't, and 3% aren't sure. It must have been a really remarkable evening for those of you who aren't sure. So Cambridge has a great strength, recognised internationally for its research in rare diseases, and you're going to hear some of the things that our researchers have been involved in over the last few years. This goes back a long way. What this slide is supposed to represent is the diagnostic odyssey, the challenge that many patients and families with rare diseases face early and sometimes over a protracted period of time. Finding the diagnosis is thought of as being looking for a needle in a haystack, and really we've gained a huge amount of power to try and help diagnose patients with rare diseases by studying the human genome. And of course, Cambridge scientists down at the Sanger Centre at Hinxton were instrumental in working to produce the first human genome sequence over 10 years ago now, in collaboration with researchers in the United States. And since then, we've seen an explosion of activity in this area, and you'll no doubt hear more about this as the evening goes on. And the real power of this genetic approach is that for some rare diseases, but not for all, because they're not all genetic, but for some rare diseases, this can dramatically shorten the diagnostic odyssey and reach a point at which patients and families can get a diagnosis which we hope leads to a treatment. Now, many rare diseases don't have treatments, but the power of this approach and the power of the work that you'll hear is giving us insight into mechanisms of these illnesses. And that's leading to new approaches to develop treatments, which is what we're all hoping for. One particular effort that we lead here across the country is something called the NIHR BioResource, which is a national resource of people who've agreed to be contacted for research in the future. And there's a particular part of the bioresource that focuses on rare diseases. And I'll just tell you a few facts and figures about this. This has been established over the last 7 to 8 years. And we've recruited over 16,000 participants into our rare disease studies, helping us to build a resource of people, of families, linked to 54 different rare disease projects. And this is truly a national exercise, with over 50 NHS trusts recruiting participants and contributing to the development of this resource. And the whole aim of this is that we can work with patients and families across the country for diseases that are rare, and thereby capturing them from across the whole population, to identify groups that might want to get involved in clinical studies to help us improve diagnosis and help us improve treatments. And we've managed to sequence the whole human genetic code in over 13,000 of these people, and we've analysed that over the last 2 years, and the results of that have been submitted for publication. It's fantastic to see the impact of this whole genome sequencing on the rate of diagnosis in some of these patient groups. It's really making a difference. All of the people who've joined the bioresource will also have genetic profiling with an array of genetic variants, which will allow us to invite them back to specific studies based on their diagnosis, some of the characteristics which we call phenotype, and their genetic characteristics which we call genotype, so that we can really accelerate pace towards developing new treatments for rare diseases which may have been neglected in the past. And this illustrates some of the recruiting sites that are involved in this, so it shows you that this is a truly national effort that's been carried out. And I suspect some of you in the audience are participants in this, or some of your family members. These are the rare diseases. You can't read them all. The red ones are the ones that are led from Cambridge, but we're participating in many different rare disease studies, some of which you'll hear about today. And if you want to see the details as to which diseases are involved, you can find these on the NIHR BioResource website. So, here's another question for you. Has a rare disease impacted you, a family member, or a friend? Let's see if it's 1 in 17, shall we? More or less. So we need 136 of these responses, because I know there are at least that many out here. Oh, we're still going. Great. So there are 141 responses, and this is the answer. So about half of you have, and half of you haven't, and 11% are not sure. So clearly, this demonstrates that you've come, a proportion of you, I guess, have come because of a personal interest, which is great. But it's also brilliant to see that there are 44% of people who aren't directly affected by this, who are interested in these issues, demonstrating, I think, the importance of this to people nationally, not just those who have affected family members. So we're hosting this event in partnership with the Cambridge Rare Disease Network, which is a charity which is driving several initiatives to promote collaboration across various stakeholder groups to increase awareness and promote the voice of patients and families affected by rare disease, raising awareness, and also to support families. So it's a pleasure to be working with them in this evening's event. And just as my final question, what do you know about rare diseases? A lot, something, a little, or nothing? My answer for me is a lot about a very small number. That should have been one of the options, shouldn't it? Okay, we're up to 137, 38. 142 responses. There you go. 13% know a lot, 35% some, 40% a little, and 13% know nothing about rare diseases. So we're going to use this information at the end of today's presentations, and we're going to repeat the question. My colleague Natalie Kingston is going to repeat the question, and let's see if the bar chart changes. So thank you very much for listening to my introduction. We're doing this in partnership with a number of organisations that you can see listed there. These are the partners of the BioResource. I hope you enjoy this evening's presentations.